Expose yourself to different emotions. If I can find emotions of bliss and happiness and gratitude, I'm going to be more inclined to go out there and find different things or create different situations or experiences or moments or relationships that are going to produce more of that emotion. And I think that's one of the things that will really help get away from this feeling of anxiety or not being good enough or stress or anger or frustration or guilt or shame. It just seems so familiar because it's just what you live with every single day. And as you get exposed to newer emotions and people that can give you different thoughts that are tied to different emotions, it's hard to unsee that. You start seeing things and be like, wow, maybe I'm not that. Maybe I can step out of that and live a different life that's full of emotions. Because I think that what you focus on is what you start to feel. And what you feel is your life.
You can never stop learning, because once you stop learning, once you start being intentional about bringing in new information, that's when you start dying. That's when you get passed up and you're going, what am I missing that everyone else isn't? Why does everyone else seem to be growing and seem to be expanding and their life is flourishing? Well, it's probably because without you even knowing it, they're making these small or maybe large investments into their education, whether it's through podcasts like this, whether it's conferences, whether it's books, whether it's actual coaching. They're getting this information from other people who are so far ahead of them. And what I've learned to be true is that sometimes it's hard to invest because you don't always necessarily see the result right away. But if you make the proper investments over consistently, then all the information that you're taking in, it comes out of your life without you even knowing it. Like for me, for example, I went to college, amazing. I've got a business degree. I couldn't tell you 3 things that I learned in school. But without me even knowing it, the education that was being poured into me throughout that whole entire time trained my thoughts on how to run a business. And it wasn't necessarily like 1 or 2 key takeaways, but just getting around the right environments allowed me to start thinking a different way. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Leveled Up Life podcast. My name is Branamier, Courtney, as always, here with McClain, here to help you level up your life in all the areas that matter the most, whether that's your faith, your family, your fitness, your finance, or your franchise. We appreciate you for leaning in, for listening up. Do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you're learning. What's the takeaways? Maybe you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, wherever you're listening from, man. We appreciate you, and it helps us so much. So get this word out if this podcast has been helping you. I talked to a lot of people this week, and probably like 4 or 5 people just like randomly ran into me. It's like, hey, man, the podcast is helping me. I'm throwing it on at the gym. I'm throwing it on, when I'm working, and appreciate pouring into us. So it's making an impact, man. I'm excited.
Man. Good to be on with you again, bro.
Good to be on every week.
And this is just going to be another conversation. And I think you said right, dude. Like our chief objective is you leave better than you came. So like you can find out some different things, some awareness, and to unpack some stuff to go out there and reach these new levels, right? We're all crossing these different gaps in our life. And I think it's I know for myself, every single week I've got a regimen of personal growth in it. Like I know I'm going to listen to these 3 podcasts. I plan it in my schedule. I know that I'm reading this book and I'm going to study these scriptures. And when I don't do that, man, I feel like I'm just missing something. My energy drops. And because if you're not growing, you're dying, right? Yep. And so the whole goal is like to develop. And so, guys, make sure to subscribe, because what I do know is this. We did a podcast a couple weeks back talking about creating habits that hold momentum. And one of those sayings was making it easy. So if you subscribe, it makes it easy, and you could stick to a habit that's going to help you level up in all the areas that matter most to you. So good to be back on, my man.
Let's do it. So 3 ways to level up your life, 3 ways to unlocking success, 3 ways to get to the next step, the next journey. We want to help you with that. If you're like, hey man, life is, good right now, but it's not great. I want to help. I need help getting to the next level. Well, hey, you're in the right place. And so we got some good stuff for you. So again, lean in. Paul, you just got back from a big conference, last week?
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that is this. So to the point of like putting together a regimen and actually having a personal growth plan. So the one tip I tell everybody on here, one of the most valuable things I've ever done is to put together a personal growth plan. So to be very intentional with my growth. And that included making sure I had, conferences on my schedule. I called you in January and I was going through and building my year. And it's like, man, I know if I'm not growing, dude, the other version of myself I don't like.
Yeah.
I'm not happy. I don't wake up in the
Right.
morning I wanna be progressing, and I feel like fulfillment and happiness is really tied to when you're developing and when you're donating, or when you're giving and you're growing, right? And you can't give out of lack. And so I was like, bro, what conferences do you want to go to? We went to Life Surge together.
Yep.
And like, let's go here. And dude, that was powerful,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And then I just got back from another convention in Vegas, and man, you get around people that have reached the success in different areas of the life that you desire, and what they could do is say, step here, don't step here, do this, don't do that. And I feel like when you have somebody that can give you their hindsight and you could pick it up as now your foresight, man, that's everything.
100%.
I mean, building businesses and stuff, like, dude, there's a lot of big errors that I made that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if I could say, hey, don't make that error. Like, I've been there. I mean, then you just saved all that. And that's the same thing as I went to this event. You know, there was a lot of people, Brand, that they had exited like 9-figure businesses. Some of them had done like 3 exits in 9-figure, which is like 100 million plus, right?
That's crazy.
And then I sat there and I said, oh, you know, what are some commonalities that I'm hearing from a lot of these different people in the business world that have seen success? It was really real estate focused, because my desire is to help develop that skill set, right? And my ability, because ability is going to unlock potential. And so I'm like, what are the commonalities that I could leave and duplicate?
Yeah.
Because, like, dude, I'm not prideful at all when it comes to that stuff. Like, dude, like, if you're like killing it, I'm like, what do you wear? Like, what boxers do you wear? I'll wear You wear Hanes, bro? I'll wear Hanes, man. Like, I don't leave nothing to chance, bro. And so one of the commonalities that we let's start with and unpack, because I want to get your opinion and advice, and let's bounce some stuff off, is personal growth. Like, everybody there really talked about whether that was having somebody that was a mentor, a coach, maybe that was different events that they had attended, but they had invested quite a bit into their education.
Right.
And development, you know. So kind of talk about like how that's helped you and the progression of the results, you know, because it's like people will see the results, but they don't see the dedication to getting better every day and the education that comes with getting better. So kind of talk about, like, you know, what does that look like?
I think you know, so most of us, we go to school, and then once we're done with school, we either go into college and get a 4-year, or we start working. And that's our concept of education, right? Yep. And we're like, once I can stop learning and start living, then I'm done with the school stuff. I'm done with the homework, right? Yep. But it's just a bad way to look at education. It's just a bad lens to see learning through. And what I've learned, and what many of you are probably learning now that you've gotten a little bit older, a little bit wiser, is you can never stop learning. Because once you stop learning, once you start being intentional about bringing in new information, man, that's when you start dying. That's when you get passed up, right? And you're going, what am I missing that everyone else isn't? Why does everyone else seem to be growing and seem to be expanding and their life is flourishing? Well, it's probably because without you even knowing it, man, they're making these small or maybe large investments into their education, whether it's through podcasts like this, whether it's conferences, whether it's books, whether it's actual coaching. Like, they're getting this information from other people who are so far ahead of them. And what I've learned to be true is that sometimes it's hard to invest because you don't always necessarily see the result right away. But if you make the proper investments over, like, consistently, then all the information that you're taking in, it comes out of your life without you even knowing it. So, like, for me, for example, I went to college, amazing. I got a business degree, but I couldn't tell you like 3 things that I learned in school, right? But like, without me even knowing it, the education that was being poured into me throughout that whole entire time, like, trained my thoughts on how to like run a business. And it wasn't necessarily like 1 or 2 key takeaways, but just getting around the right environments allowed me to then start thinking a different way, right? So now that I didn't go to Bible school, right? But I'm a pastor. So how did that happen? Well, I educated myself. I got around people who are further ahead of me. I took, you know, not necessarily college courses, but now I've been around it so long. I've made the investment into my education for so long. I got different courses and different programs that I've gone through for so many different years. So I've been a student of the game for a long time, and I think people just don't want to be a student anymore. Like, people just want to teach without actually learning, or they just want the result without actually the investment.
Dude, I remember golfing with you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, what are you listening to? And you were doing a whole study on, I think, the book of Acts or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, to me, when I see that, dude, it's like validation of like, and it makes me excited.
Right.
So I remember, kind of learning a lot about like personal growth, and you start reading books and stuff, and you're like, okay, there's commonalities to successful people. Like success leaves clues, and dude, I'm looking for the clues, and once I find it, man, I'm going to become obsessed with that. And I remember we were golfing, and you were listening to, like a whole seminary message on that study, and like to me, I was like, dude, that's just proof of why there's so much fruit. And I feel like, God's going to give you what you can manage, right? It's like the story of the guys with the talents, right? And they got so many. Well, they were given it based off of their ability. Right. And so the guy that only got one, his ability wasn't as good as the guy that got more. Right. And then their action, what they did with that was evident in that, right? Yeah. And so my whole goal was like, man, how can I increase my ability in getting better, right? And I think that for anybody on here, no matter what you're in, you've got different roles and goals, right? So if you're a parent, what's the education? What's the growth plan of being a parent? If you're running a business, or maybe you're an employee right now and you desire to run a business. Like we have some entrepreneurs, some women downstairs that are therapists that started their business here at the level of building about a year ago. Well, they were employees until they stepped out and became business owners. So if that's you and you're like, man, I'm employee now, but I desire to be a business. Or maybe you're like, I'm working this job and I'm not passionate, and I'm passionate about this, and that there's a business, there's a problem that you can solve with that business. Well, man, start studying that. Start being so studious with that, where it's like you're consumed, where it's what you think about day and night.
What should someone do? Like, is it just a time investment? Is it a financial investment? Like, what's the commonalities that you see that these ultra successful people making? Like, are they buying coaching programs? Are they reading a million books? I'll be honest, I'm not a big book reader, right? I got a book. You got a bookcase full of books, like I do too, but I haven't read half of them.
Well, the Bible.
I stole half your books just to put them on my shelf, but I read the Bible. You know what I mean?
Well, all these books are produced from 100%. It. They just kind of hit 100%. It from a different level.
So what is it like? What do you see most people investing in? Is it like books? Is it education? Is it coaching?
Like, I think it's all of it, dude.
Yeah,
it's all of the above. So like I think that you want to find somebody that you can kind of connect well with, right? Yeah. So their style and whatever, and then you're like, okay, they're having really success.
That's key, is the style for me.
For anybody,
100%.
Like I'll give you an example. Like in sales, when I got into sales at 19, dude, I knew that was going to be the very thing that would help me provide for my family, and that was going to allow me to start getting ahead, because I was 19, flat broke, new baby, struggling, didn't know how to be a husband, didn't know how to be a dad, didn't know how to be I didn't know how to be none of those things, and I was all of those things. Yeah, and so. At that point in time, I was like, all right, I have to get this down. And so in my car ride, no matter when I was driving, this is back where there was MP3s. There was no podcast. It was like me slapping in the CD. But dude, I every minute that I had that was free and available, I was spent just listening to different people that I was like, I connect with them. The way the art of this sell, their psychology, their approach, it's not pushy. It's more like, I'm not selling, I'm serving you. And that whole approach was like, I can get with that. I can get passionate about my product, and then help the client, because I want to serve them, not about me making a sale. And so I connected with a couple people that were really good, and then I studied it, dude. And then I read books about it, and it was nonstop until a point where I was able to go out there and become one of the top sales producers and trainers, because not of my skill set or gift set. It was simply because of my discipline to a personal growth plan. Yeah. And same thing, like when I had no money, I was spending $20,000 on John Maxwell events and different courses and different. I mean, if you look at how many courses I've purchased and things I've gone.
Well, now today, I mean, everything's free. Like everything's on YouTube, But you got to make. And sometimes, because I asked you that because sometimes people are like, I have no money to invest. I can't spend $20,000 to go to a conference or be a part, but like you can invest your time. Like you could be intentional with that. Like what are you investing right now into your education, man? All these successful people, you talk about people that exit 9-figure companies, that seems so far out for many of us, right? But it's like, man, if that's a commonality amongst all these successful people, that they're investing into their personal growth, then maybe, just maybe, we should be doing the same thing, right? Whether it's books, education, courses, YouTube videos, like most of it's free. Like we talked about, we were at one point talking about like coaching program, putting that stuff together. And you showed me, I think it was Hermosi had his whole like, back end office, but that's like $10 a month. It's like less than Netflix. You can have access to, these multimillionaires who are showing you how to not just run businesses, but how to be a good human, and so.
Well, the one thing I would say too, Brian, is like, when you start like betting on yourself, then that changes everything. And so like when I was investing into these different conferences and seminars, man, it would have been easy to say like, dude, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why don't you try to save for your first house, or why don't you? But I just knew that like that's gonna be the fast track. If I can spend $20,000 or $10,000 or $5,000, whatever the event was, and that would give me the ability to get there 2 years quicker.
Yeah.
Man, there's successes in speed.
Yep.
And so now I'm able to make an extra $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. It's an investment. I'd spend. You say, Paul, give me $1,000, and in a week I'll give you 10. It's like, well, how many times can we do it, bro? Like, is it unlimited? Is it 5, 10? And so I think that, for somebody on here, maybe, you've not bet on yourself and you've used that as an excuse. Like, I just can't afford it. No, you can't afford not to.
Right.
If you're in a spot where you're just trying to get to these next levels and it's tough and tight, like, you can't afford not to. And the moment you say that, you're saying, man, I bet on myself. And once you bet on yourself, man, you're going to typically start seeing more victories than you would see.
That's really good.
If you're waiting on yourself.
Yeah. And I just want to encourage, like, we're not just talking about, financial success as far as personally growing. Like, you got to invest into your marriage. Like, you got to invest into your kids. Like, there's education stuff on how to be a better parent, how to be a better husband. Like, we have a program at our church called Grace Marriage. It starts out, there's 150 couples there, but by week 6, there's 19, right? It's because people lack the discipline to fully devote themselves to educating themselves on how to be a better spouse. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we live in. But if you could just stick to it, if you could just commit yourself to, I'm gonna learn this concept. I'm gonna learn these strategies. I'm gonna dive in deep, and I'm gonna educate myself based on other people who are further ahead that I look up to, that I can relate to, because I want the results that they have. But it starts with making a commitment to self-education, to personal growth. So,
well, it's kind of like, Brian, think about this. Like, it's not just, it's a mechanics, but the mindset too, right? So like, you'll learn different strategies. Like, I remember reading my a book on parenting. I'm trying to remember what it is. I'll put it in the description. But it was a book that talked about how to listen to your kids. And I remember reading it, and it gave me a strategy of what that looked like, right?
Right.
And I was like, this is great. But at the end of the day, the mindset and me controlling my emotions and the way I think is even more important, because I can know the strategy, but in that moment where my kid's like disrespectful or whatever, like, it's tough.
Right.
Like, for instance, like who on here, if I ask, an honest question, be direct, but like, who knows the fundamental strategy of losing weight?
Right.
Like, everybody. Like, you eat, you put less food in your mouth, and you work out. Like, that's a fundamental strategy. But how many have got the perfect body? Like, dude, I'm so happy. Right, so it's not strategy. That's good. It's mindset. It's a mindset thing. And so I think that's a big thing when you start to, your thought process that you're at right now. I know for me, man, I got all kinds of areas of growth with my marriage, my being a parent, business, faith. Like, I want to develop. And my thought process I've got now is not the thought process I'm going to need to reach a new level. That new level is going to come after my new thought process comes.
That's good.
And so I got to put myself in a room where I'm exposed. That's why I love having conversations with you, Brandon, and we get just to talk about, God, the Word, and then how that is applicable in different areas. Because when I leave, I start to see things differently. I mean, think about how many times we've had a conversation. I'm like, dude, that's so good, because you'll give me a different, viewpoint on like God's sovereignty and our free will. We talked about this on vacation, and I'm like, dude, I didn't see it like that. And now because I see it differently, I can never not see it again. Right. And that was the second thing I want to pack is like this law of exposure. Most of them spoke about talking about being exposed to different levels of success and different ways to see things and different vantage points. Kind of talk about how that's
it's about getting in the room. It's about getting around the right people. It's about getting around people who are further ahead than you. I mean, if you're constantly hanging out with people that are at your level or below you, then that's exactly where you're going to stay. And so it's almost like a life hack. It's like if I can get around someone who's 10 years ahead of me in any area of life, then just by exposure alone, I'm going to increase my ability to get there. And so for me, I mean, that's been the key to most all my success, whether it would be, in the church world or as a dad or whatever it is, man. How could I get around people who are just so much further than me? I'm trying to think about biblically, right? Like getting in the room, how important that is. I think about the upper room, right? I think about when Jesus had his 12 disciples in the room, and kind of instituted a new covenant. Like he broke bread with them. How like what would you do to get in that room? You know what I mean? Before or after.
It's good.
When Jesus went to heaven, like after he was crucified, he told the disciples, don't go anywhere. Like wait for the gift of the Father. Wait till the Holy Spirit comes. What they do? They went and got in the room. Like they went and got in the upper room, 120 of them, and they fasted and they prayed and they waited until the Holy Spirit came, and out of the room was birthed the church. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm just trying to think about how important it is to and it's not the room, it's not the walls, it's the people, right? So how important it is to get around the right people. Man, what would you pay to get in the room? What would you pay to be a fly on the wall in some of these rooms? And so what are some rooms that maybe you have to get into? Maybe it's your neighbors that you see that have an extremely successful marriage, and from the outside it looks amazing. Well, maybe you should go talk to them and see how, man, every time I see you with your kids, you seem to be so happy and joy-filled, and you got nice cars, you got nice things. Like, go talk to them. See if you can get in the room. It's the law of exposure. Yeah. Because once you see what a better life can be, you can't unsee it. I remember my dad told me a story one time, because he grew up in Barstow, and he's like, his dad was a police officer. His mom was a nurse, and so they had that middle class family, But he's like, we didn't go on vacations. We didn't leave Barstow really. It was like a treat to go to Victorville. But he's like, I remember when I was 18, one of my friends went to Huntington Beach. He's like, so I went with him, and he's like, I didn't know, like there was this whole other world an hour and a half away.
That's funny.
I had no idea like people live this way. It was a whole new concept to me. And so he's like, I went back to Barstow. I told my parents I'm going to college in Huntington Beach, and that's what he did. He went to college in Huntington Beach, and he was exposed to a whole new mindset, a whole new way of living. And like 3 years later, he started a security company, like sold it, and just like his whole journey started. But it's like just getting around a new way of thinking, new way of living. And it's crazy because most of us don't even know that. I think about like when we go on vacations and we go stay at nice hotels, like we cannot take the kids to nice hotels now. Like we messed them up. You know what I mean?
Messed up in a good way.
Yeah, messed up in a good way, because now their expectation of life is just so much. It's great. Yeah. It's really good. So the law of exposure, getting around the right people.
Hey, the funny thing is, dude, I have the same story. Like I grew up in Hesperia.
Yeah.
Right. My dad was a plumber. And I was born down the road in Apple Valley.
Yeah.
And so I remember being like 17 years old, and one of my buddies at school was like, hey, we're going to go to Spring Valley Lake. I'm like, what is that?
All right.
There's a lake. I'm like, there's a lake where? He's like, dude, a mile away. Dude, I grew up 2 miles away from a huge lake where you could go wakeboarding, sea doing, like have
houses
some
on
fun.
the water.
Houses on the water. Dude, I remember I went there, and it was like 2 miles away from where I was raised and lived for 17 years, and I didn't even know it was there. And I'm like, dude, this is incredible. And then one of my goals was like, man, I'm going to get on the lake, And, like 8 years ago, we were blessed enough to buy a house on the lake. Now it's a vacation home, and we go there when we want to use it. But it's funny how, like, it's like if you ever fly private on a private jet, you can't ever fly Spirit again. Yeah, you might be able to go back to.
I wouldn't know about that, Paul. But.
you can't fly Spirit ever again, right? And but there's just things that you want to be exposed to, so you start looking at everything differently. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I just think that it's important also to understand that, expose yourself to different emotions. For me, it's like if I can find emotions of bliss and happiness and gratitude,
that's good.
Well, then I'm gonna be more likely and inclined to go out there and find different things or create different situations or experiences or moments or relationships that are going to produce more of that emotion. And I think that's one of the things that will really help get away from maybe something that you feel like, I just feel like this feeling of anxiety or not being good enough or stress or anger or frustration or guilt or shame. It just seems so familiar because it's just what you live with every single day. Yeah. And as you get exposed to newer emotions and people that can kind of give you different thoughts that are tied to different emotions, well, then all of a sudden, like, it's hard to unsee that.
Yeah.
You know, you start seeing things and be like, wow, maybe I'm not that. Maybe I can step out of that,
Right. That's really good.
and live a different life that's full of emotions. Because I think that, like, what you focus on is what you start to feel. And what you feel is your life. So if I'm focused on mostly negative things or out of my control, and I'm exposing myself to that consistently, well, that's going to be my life.
Yeah.
But if I can start exposing myself and really kind of slowing down and saying, why do I feel this way?
Right.
And what rooms can I get into? It's almost like, you know, how many stories do you have, you know, Brand, where somebody goes to church for the first time, they get in the room, they get in the building, and they're around people that are faith-filled, right? Mm-hmm. They hear a word from God that, you know, is sharper than any double-edged sword, that when it goes out, it doesn't come back void. And now all of a sudden they leave and, like, they can't unsee that.
Right.
I remember for me, like, really having that encounter with Christ and accepting him into my heart and starting to say, like, wow, I'm gonna follow him. Like, I had gone out and had success in a lot of different areas from a world standpoint, but the moment that I felt that void being filled in, man, I could never not have that.
Right.
And so the moment, every time I kind of get off and I'm not, like, in my word or not you know, praying and really kind of feeding my faith and developing that relationship with God, I feel that void.
Right.
And now, because I've been exposed to it, I'm aware of it. It's like, dude, I'm now I know that nothing else. I'm not going to start chasing.
Nothing else can fill you.
Yeah, I'm not going to start chasing, like, another title or position, because I know now that I've been exposed that it's only God that can fill that void. Then I'm like, okay, I feel this way, so what do I need to do? I don't need to go work harder or try to work smarter. I'm feeling this way because I've not been in my word. I've not been in prayer. And let me get back to that, because I know that that's been the void. That's been the only thing that fills it, you know?
I mean, every week I people come into the church, or, you know, talk to people within the church, and they're like, man, I didn't know, you know, I could be around a group of people who were encouraging, who were motivating, who, you know, weren't pouting and complaining about everything. I was just so used to, you know, regular life. I didn't know this was out there. And it's like, well, it's the joy of the Lord. That's our strength, you know? And so that's why people every single week come in. It's like they're exposed to a whole new world. They're exposed to the real love of God, not rules and religion, right? And again, it just goes back to the power of exposure, of getting around the right people, of opening up your mind, of seeing things in a new light. Yeah, I mean.
Well, dude, so as far as, like, it's like, those would be the two things I think that for anybody on here, I know as I was at that event, and you know, and I went to the event really to kind of learn some strategies, right? Like, I've built a 7-figure business in real estate, and I'm trying to figure out how to take it to another level.
Quietly, you have, which is crazy.
Well, it was it's secondary to the financial services, but now it's like, man, I want to kind of do more in that area, and I know that I'm not going to fall over the place. Like, I've learned from the prior business that that's not the way to do it. And so, but as I'm sitting there, man, like, again, like, what you realize is that they did go through strategy, but everything was on mindset. Because
mindset,
80% is mindset. You know, most people kind of know how to, you know, you've been, like, exposed. You've had a glimpse of, like, what it looks like to be that next level version spouse, right? You've had a glimpse of what it looks like to be that next level version parent, business owner. You've had a glimpse of what it looks like to be, you know, a little bit more fit, and how you feel when you eat a little bit better and you work out a little bit more. But man, is it so easy? I know for me, dude, to go back to default and be in the knowing, but not in the doing.
Right.
And it's only in the doing that we actually start to really kind of identify the true knowing, and then it becomes known again because it's a part of who we are. But, like, so what they talked a lot about was, like, okay, if you want to go to a next level, it's not as much as knowing like who you currently are now, yes, and having exposure and building awareness, having some strategy, yes, but it's also about, like, what do we need to let go of? You know, like, what's kind of holding your back? I remember this this crazy guy that, you know, when I got in financial services, he had success, and he'd always talk about, dude, what monkey's on your back? Like, what's holding you back? You know, and the whole thing is, like, sometimes we don't slow down enough and focus on maybe we just need to delete some things.
That's good.
Remove some things. You did a great message on demo day. I remember you had the hard hat on, bro, and you're talking about like, yes, we want to build a great life,
Right.
but we need to demolish some things as well.
Absolutely.
That was a long time ago. I don't know how I thought about that right now. It was because of hard hat.
Yeah.
It was the hard hat. But you know, it's like we got to demolish some of these generational things, and maybe some things we've picked up from our parents, upbringing,
it's
experiences.
Really good. It's really good.
I mean, what do you kind of
it's
seeing
like
all that?
it's like trying to remodel a house or redecorate the house, and you have all your old junk in there, and you're trying to put up new walls and new furniture, but you got the old broken walls and the old tile fixtures and everything is in there, and it's like, okay, you're going to build new stuff, but it's never going to look right because you still got all your old stuff that's holding you back, that's actually not increasing any value because all the old stuff's still in there, bringing the value back down. And so demo day, like you gotta demolish some things in your life. Maybe, like you mentioned it, maybe it's something from your parents, and I don't want to say generational curses necessarily, but generational behaviors or generational thoughts or generational habits that just pass down from your grandparents to your parents, and then without you even knowing it or recognizing it, man, you all of a sudden talk the same way, think the same way, respond the same way, and that same way will never get you to the new way. And so you got to, number one, recognize it, and then you got to demolish, like the strongholds we talked about, I think in the second, third podcast. Like you got to demolish some of these old ways. So you got to identify it, you got to expose it, and then you got to bring light to it. I'm trying to think like good examples for me. What could have that been? I remember when we first got married, right? So, I've been married almost. Shoot, I might mess this up.
She's gonna watch
mess this up, bro.
Dude. This is where everything went. This is where you level down.
Yeah. I think 11 years.
11 years.
11 years this July.
How old is Bronx?
He's 10. Don't judge. Yeah.
I ain't judging you, bro.
He's almost.
I'm wearing the same shoes as you in this situation, dude. I'm high fiving you, man.
Yeah. That's always a good way to find out. That's how old is Bronx. So this July will be 11 years. But I remember when we first got married. So I married Mariah. You married Natasha, their sister. So they had obviously the same upbringing, and their parents are still married to this day. Served in the church, love each other, like amazing relationship. Obviously, they got their own things, but from a holistic point of view, like everything that you'd want in a parent, right? That was their exposure. Me it was almost the opposite. My parents had a great marriage when I was a kid, but that got a divorce when I was 11. Then my dad went on and got remarried, had kids. My mom, so a very different way of looking at marriage. So when the two become one, so when I married Mariah, it's like, man, I had to if I ever wanted a successful marriage and healthy children and healthy relationships, I had to let go of some things that I had been exposed to, some, and without me even knowing, I was acting like a full of pride.
You'll never know.
You never know until it's
subconscious.
Like, it's subconscious. It's ingrained in you because that's all you see, and you have to demolish some of those old, and that's not overnight, right? It's something that takes a long time, but you have to identify it, and you have to really challenge yourself and do the homework and recognize and not try to hold it all in. So for me, it was like ego. For me, it was pride. For me, it was like, I'm always right. For me, it was, I'm older, I'm wiser, I've done it, I've been around this earth longer than you have. But if you're ever going to grow, if you're ever going to level up, like you gotta demolish those thought patterns. You gotta demolish those generational curses or generational behaviors. And so I think for anyone out there, maybe it's not just a marriage thing, maybe it's a financial thing, maybe your parents have struggled financially for a long time, and now you see yourself in the same lifestyle, and it's just like it's repeating without you even knowing it. Now your kids are getting older and they're seeing the same thing. Well, you gotta identify what that is, and you gotta expose that and bring some new life to it, bring some new light to it, or it's just gonna continue over and over, generation after generation. And so I think that's what kind of a lot of the successful people at this conference were referring to is man, you gotta be the one that steps out. You got to be the one that breaks the habit, breaks the chain. And oftentimes that it takes courage, it takes boldness, it takes because you become the one that takes all the arrows. You become the different one now. You become the one that goes, oh, you think you're better than us? Oh, all of a sudden you go to church. All of a sudden, you're listening to podcasts. Who? Oh, you don't drink no more. Who do you think you are? And so it shines this new light on you. But if something's going to change, you got to step out. So
and it's just one decision.
one decision.
Put
yeah.
down the bottle and pick up a dumbbell.
That's right.
You know what
Come
I mean?
on.
But, you know,
Hey, someone told before you go. Someone told me at church this Sunday, you weren't there, but someone goes, "Hey, I was Paul's teacher or something like that, like way back in elementary." And he's like, it was a girl. She goes, "I saw him a couple weeks ago," and I go, "Hey, I didn't know you go to God's house." And I remember you used to be a dope dealer. Now you're a hope dealer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking to?
Yeah.
She was just busting up, but anyway.
That's what she told me. She's like, I remember you.
Yeah, I remember.
I was like, hey,
Look at me now, baby.
I'm not hiding none of that. That's
Chain
part
breaker.
of my story.
Yep. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, what I did before 18, from 12 to 18, you know, I think I got it all out of the way quickly.
Yeah.
But dude, so look at this. This is a story that I want to kind of highlight real quick. It really spotlights this point specifically, right? It's these two fathers, two families, and two faiths. So these two guys born around the same time, you know, same upbringing. Like the story's almost, you know, very identical. And so you got Jonathan Edwards. He was one of the greatest minds that God has given America. He lived in the state of New York. Christian, believed Christian training. He married a girl of like character. They take a look at all his descendants. So he lived like just a good life, a life where he was just trying to get better. He was trying to level up in all the areas. Like he was intentional. He wasn't focused on, you know, he didn't want self-sabotage to kind of take over. And so he was intentional. Look at his family, you know, tree. So the generations, it says that he had 729 descendants. And this is over like hundreds of years, you know, 300 preachers, 65 college professors, 13 university presidents, 60 authors of good books, 3 United States congressmen, 1 vice president of the United States. And this is all going from one person that made a decision to change things. They made a decision that I'm not going to be my past. I'm not going to, you know, be what's happened to me. I'm going to decide to choose differently, right? Because how many know that, you know, maybe you've experienced where it's like, man, how does every relationship, even when it seems like it's going good, end that way? How is every time that I get a bonus or more money coming in, how does it always end where I'm like, it's still back to not enough, not having it? How does 90% of lottery winners in 24 months file bankruptcy? You know, how do we stop that, right? And so then you got Max Jukes. He lived in the same state. He did not believe in any kind of like, you know, disciplines to help build faith or level up his life. He just kind of lived by default, right? He had a girl of like character, same kind of situation, right? So from the Union, men have studied that out of 1,026 descendants, 300 of them died prematurely, like really early deaths due to just poor living. 100 of them were sent to the penitentiary for an average of 13 years each. 190 were public prostitutes. There were 100 drunkards, 8 murderers, and it goes on and on. They found this out because in a penitentiary, they looked at the bloodline, and there was like over 45 men that had the same bloodline as this guy, and it had cost over $1.2 million at that time from the state, which is like $12 million or something inordinate nowadays. And so, you know, you got these two people, and what it shows and what it reveals is that, man, like you've got one choice and everything can change. Like you just got to make the decision that I'm not going to continue to live what I've been exposed to live what's familiar, to live what's become my normal because of what I've been raised in, right? And to me, I read as I was going through that, I'm like, dude, that's so powerful. Because you could be the one person on you watching right now. You could be the one that changes everything for generations to come. Where now that generation, opposed to it looking one way, it looks completely different. And you're the one that stopped the alcoholism. You're the one that stopped the premature marriages and babies, all these different things. Like you could be the one that breaks that financial poverty where it's like, my family's never had enough. My dad, my grandpa, but now all of a sudden you create generational wealth because of the philosophies, the thought processes, the things that you pass on and the character that you've established because you chose to go out there and level up your life. And I just think it was such a powerful way to kind of, you know, really show that, you know, those two same fathers, same kind of families, different fate.
That's really good. Be the one.
Be the one.
Be the one that makes the decision. Be the one that steps out. Be the ones that that's not afraid to look silly to those around you. You know, be the one to find new rooms to get into. Be the one to invest in your education, invest in your personal growth. Be the one. Maybe we should call the title of this one, Be the One.
Be the one.
Be the one that changes everything for your life, for your family, for your kids, for your future. Man, this has been a good one.
Hey, now the one thing I tell you is let other people be exposed to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you said it, well, Brand, like once you're exposed to something, you can never not be exposed to that again. And so maybe there's somebody that is the one, but they have to be exposed to something like this, a podcast like this, where it's unpacked, and they could say, man, I want to be the one. And now they're inspired and encouraged to say, let me spend some time dealing with the pain of going through this, because it's not easy, man.
Nope.
I mean, trauma trickles down until somebody makes a decision to deal with the pain. If you don't deal with the pain, it'll continue to show up in somebody else's life. And what I realize is that, man, a lot of people, there's people that have success in one area, and then the other area is really just suffering, you know. And a lot of times that suffering is just tied to the past, right? The way they were brought up. Maybe their family taught success principles on finances, and that's trickled down. But maybe the parents, you know, their marriage fell apart, and maybe the dad remarried 3 or 4 different spouses and had multiple. You don't know. And the reality is, it's like at the end of the day, the moment we can take ownership and say, like, man, my parents it was their first time at life too.
Yeah.
They were just trying to figure it out.
Right.
I'm not going to hold on to the fact that it was because of that led me to here. No, we're all here. We're all jacked up. I mean, we're all sinners falling short of and we all need a savior. And it's like, if we could just slow down and spend time with God and unpack these different things and really kind of say, okay, why do I feel this way? And then start making some different choices. Say, no, I'm going to choose a different emotion. I'm going to release that emotion.
Yeah.
And I'm going to choose to go after it and find some different things, whether it's a class, a course, different people to follow to kind of help me eliminate these self-sabotaging behaviors.
Pastor.
Exactly.
A church, something. Yeah, it's really good. Really good, bro. I think you said it well.
Well, guys, let's go out there and make it a big, big week.
Absolutely.
Hey, let's unlock the door to the next level in our life. Brand, I appreciate you as always, dude. Love you, dude. Let's go out there and crush it this week. Hey, we're almost into the second quarter, right?
Almost there.
Hey, this is a time where you kind of reflect, look at it, plan, strategize, and let's move to these new levels, guys. So, hey, we love you. Make it a big week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
See you guys.